One of the most interesting stories about the helmet was actually obtaining Terry Bradshaw's autograph. One of my mother's best friends lived in Texas in the 1990s, just down the road from Mr. Bradshaw's ranch. She had seen him several times in the local community, and he'd actually jogged past their home on several occasions. My mother was planning a trip to Texas to visit her friend and was absolutely convinced that if she took the helmet with her, wrote Mr. Bradshaw a letter while she was there, that somehow, some way, she would bring the helmet home and Terry Bradshaw's autograph would be on it. Needless to say, I was a little skeptical. There had already been several signatures on the helmet at that point in time, and I just wasn't sure how I felt about the helmet being taken on a trip to Texas. However, my mother was very convincing, and begrudgingly, I allowed her to take it with her. She never left it out of her sight. She actually carried it onto the airplane. When it was going through airport security and it went through the scanner, several of the workers there actually commented, "There's a football helmet in that bag." She took it to dinner with her. When they arrived at the hotel, she was scared to leave it in the hotel by itself. So everywhere she went, she actually carried the bag with the football helmet in it. When she arrived at her friend's home, she wrote Mr. Bradshaw a letter. She told him what big fans we were and about the project we were working on, and asked if he'd be willing to sign the helmet. 3 days into their trip, they hadn't heard anything, and then all of a sudden they got a call from Mr. Bradshaw's secretary, who worked in an office downtown. She said that she normally didn't do it, but the envelope that they had written the letter in had 2 different colors of ink in it. When my mother wrote the envelope, she wasn't sure what town he lived in. He actually lived on the border of 2 different towns, so they took the envelope into the post office and talked to one of the clerks. The clerks knew exactly which town he lived in due to the volume of mail, so they had actually written the envelope out in black ink, but filled in the town in blue ink. And because of the 2 different colors of ink, Mr. Bradshaw's secretary actually opened his personal mail, which she said she never does. Fortunately, it was raining that day, and Mr. Bradshaw was home. He was supposed to be playing golf that day. His secretary called the home, talked to Mr. Bradshaw, read him the letter, and he said that my mom and her friends could bring the helmet into his office and that he would autograph it. At the time of the call, my mom was on a trip to the zoo with her friends. Her friend's husband actually called them and said that Mr. Bradshaw's secretary had called, but he had no idea where the paint pen was for the helmet to be signed. It was kind of funny because he ended up telling my mother that he dumped the purse out on the table so he could get the paint pen to take into the office to have Mr. Bradshaw sign the helmet. My mother never let on that she had Mr. Bradshaw autograph the helmet. When she arrived back in Pennsylvania and brought the helmet back to our home, she actually acted like she had not gotten the signature. So I sort of felt like saying, "I told you so." And she handed me the bag. When I opened the bag, the first thing I saw was Terry Bradshaw's autograph on the front of the helmet, and I could not believe it. I was more than ecstatic. We actually took a picture of me with the helmet and sent it to Mr. Bradshaw with a thank you note for having him sign the helmet. We were fortunate enough to meet Mr. Bradshaw a couple years later, and I was actually able to thank him in person.